exploration. Its main floor is a single cavernous room, 476 feet long, 90 wide, and 6 stories high, down the middle of which runs its main exhibit. The Saturn V is displayed on its side, and broken into its component stages to show off the engines on each. 3 old-timers were seated together on a bench under the rocket's enormous F-1 engines, which jutted from the bottom of its S-1C booster stage. They are the strongest rocket engines ever put to use, and amid the museum's bright, kid-friendly cheer, the brutal elemental power manifest in their fat tangles of pipes, valves, and pumps was unnerving. Their fluted mouths, a dozen feet across and built to spout great tales of fire and thunder, were no less fearsome for their silence. The men on the bench were inured to the menace overhead. All wore white lab coats that identified them as museum docents and retired rocket scientists. I stopped in front of the bench. They were in their 80s by the looks of them, maybe older. "Excuse me," I said. "I'm looking for Sonny Morea. Do you know where I could find him?" "He was just here," one of the men replied. On the right breast of his lab coat, beneath his name tag, was an embroidered logo bearing the legend NASA Emeritus. "He's here," another said. "He's around. He might have just stepped away for a minute." "He might be down there," the first man told me, pointing to the Davidson Center's far end. "That's where he usually is, back in that corner." I thanked them and started that way, walking beneath the Saturn, which rests well off the floor on heavy steel cradles. Its scale borders on the absurd. The S-1C stage, essentially a flying gas can that muscled all 6.2 million pounds of the rocket off the pad and into the upper atmosphere, is 138 feet long and 33 feet in diameter. It occupies half the Davidson's lofty headspace lying down. The S-2 stage, which took the Saturn into the airless black, came after, just as big around and 82 feet long. I passed under the S-4B, or third stage, narrower at 21 feet 8 inches across, but still a monster. It put the astronauts into orbit, sent them on their way to the moon, and carried, in a shroud at its top, the lunar module. Beyond was a mock-up of the comparatively tiny Apollo spacecraft, the payload for all the rocket below. The main act, it consisted of the service module, supplying power, air, water, and electronics to the crew, and the command module, otherwise known as the capsule. It took me several minutes to walk the length of this behemoth, with requisite pauses to admire its audacity. Stacked and ready for liftoff, it had stretched more than 3 times the length of the Wright brothers' first flight. Up under the capsule's nose, 400 feet from the old-timers at the tail, I saw that they'd been joined by a 4th figure in a lab coat. I hurried back to introduce myself. I'd seen photographs of Saverio Sonny Morea taken in the late 1960s. Natalie turned out, by the professional engineering standards of the day, in crisp Oxford shirts, bow ties, and skinny lapelled sport coats, his dark hair trimmed short on the sides in the prevailing NASA style. The photos hinted at a certain consistency of temperament. Whenever a flash went off, Sonny Morea seemed to wear an expression of expectant delight. They suggested that here was a guy who enjoyed conversation, liked people, didn't sweat the little stuff. 50 years had passed since. He was now 87, but it was instantly clear that Morea's long exposure to Earth's gravity had done little to mask his cheer. We shook hands. "I'm sorry I wasn't here when you got here," he said, smiling. "Have you been down there to see it?" He had a crooner's tenor, still tinged with Richmond Hill, Queens. 60-odd years after he left the old neighborhood, and with almost all of that time spent in Alabama, no less. "No," I told him. "I didn't get that far." "Well, then, let's go have a look." Back up the length of the Saturn we ventured. Morea tilted forward about 10 degrees, and hurrying on very short steps to keep up with the lean. Past the rocket's tip, the Davidson's gallery was twilit, with spots illuminating a few holy grail items of Apollo history. The scorched command module, Casper, from Apollo 16, interior lit to show off the 3 couches its crew occupied, an A-7L spacesuit, worn in Earth orbit and now encased in glass, and what we'd come to see.